Great group of women, to have this great group of women talking to us about the Pink Eraser Project. So I want you to know that we will be taking questions, but at the end of this program. So just go ahead and enter your questions in your box, and then we're going to answer them all at the same time at the end of the program. But we do encourage your questions. So thank you for being on. Thank you for being super patient with us. We really appreciate that. So I get to introduce Kristen, right? I get to introduce Kristen tonight. So I want to tell you a little bit about Pink Eraser Project, and then you're going to hear all kinds of details tonight. But Kristen Dahlgren and Michelle Young are both breast cancer survivors, and they met when Kristen interviewed Michelle for the NBC's Today Show about Michelle's journey to survive stage 4 breast cancer and her quest to save other women from the devastating effects of this disease. Michelle had been diagnosed with de novo breast cancer in 2018 and was told to go through her bucket list. In that moment, she decided to save her life and others. She researched, she traveled to and met with the giants in the field, and she saw firsthand a revolution taking place that could end breast cancer. Kristen was inspired by Michelle, the doctors, and the science. When she decided she was going to leave her career as an award-winning correspondent on NBC, she chose to act on this inspiration and form the Pink Eraser Project along with Michelle. Kristen has seen from her career in journalism how even one person can change the world. She too realized that we are at a unique moment in time when the right collaboration and funding could mean breast cancer vaccines within a decade. She could not let this opportunity pass without doing everything she could to build a future where no one must go through what she went through. Together, they're leading this historic effort to end breast cancer as we know it. So I am delighted to introduce our first speaker tonight, which is Kristen Dahlgren. Kristen, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Story. I'm so thrilled to be here and talking about this. In listening to you introduce me, it sounds a little crazy that I left a job as an NBC correspondent to form a nonprofit. It was a good job. I did love it, but cancer changes everything. And so my diagnosis in 2019 really impacted how I saw the world, and not in a bad way. I knew immediately that it was something that I wanted to share with the world and that I could maybe help other people out there. Backing up to 2019, I didn't really think about cancer that much. I was in the, I'm too young, I don't have a family history, I'm not somebody who is going to get breast cancer at this point in my life. And I just had a mammogram. So I had that mammogram in May of 2019. It came back clear. And so I thought I was in the clear. And then September 1st, on my 47th birthday, I saw a dent in my breast when I was getting ready to go out. It was something that had not been there before, or I hadn't noticed before. And so I thought back to a story that I had done in 2016. They sent me for NBC Nightly News out to the Mayo Clinic, and we were talking about a new study that said 1 in 6 women with breast cancer doesn't present with a lump. So I had always before that thought it was going to feel something like a marble if I had a breast cancer, if I had something in my breast. And it really didn't feel like that at all. It was kind of spread out, and it was this dent. There was something beneath it, and it was more of a thickening. But because I had done that story, I knew that it was something that I wanted to get checked out. And my husband really encouraged me to do that. Of course, life was busy. The next day I got sent to cover a hurricane on the Outer Banks. And so as I was driving to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and everyone else was evacuating, I called the local hospital and I said, this is going to sound a little funny, but have you gotten any cancellations in radiology, and could I come in for a mammogram and ultrasound? And they said, well, why don't you just wait until you get home? The storm is coming. So you know what? I really think that it's something that I need to get looked at. And so within a few days, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. I had multifocal breast cancer, so there were several tumors in my right breast, and I also had some lymph node involvement. But what I learned is that you really need to know your body. And so I thought that was an important message for me to get out. And so, as treatment went on, I decided that it was something that I wanted to share with others. And so at that point, I went on the Today Show and revealed that I was battling cancer and, showed the bald pictures and all. And I wanted it to be an honest look at what it was like for me so that other people knew it was okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about changes in your bodies and to definitely get things checked out. So that sort of started my advocacy, if you will. And I talked about how mammograms are not the be all end all for screening, and that for many women who have dense breasts, we need to get other screenings. And so I was in New York at the time. I must have gotten a letter in the mail because that was what they were doing that told me I had dense breasts, but I don't even know if I opened it. I didn't know what it meant. Nobody encouraged me to do additional screening. And so there were those extra 4 or 5 months when maybe I could have been gotten into treatment sooner and maybe had, a different result or not been as advanced. And so I started to talk about that, and that's when I met Michelle Young. I was interviewing her about this issue of dense breasts and screening that other women should do, and she'll talk about, all the wonderful work that she did in Ohio, changing the laws. And then afterwards, Michelle kept in touch and she kept calling me and saying, I heard that there are these breast cancer vaccines. And I thought, well, gosh, I would have heard of it. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I'm a medical reporter. Surely I would know that it's out there. And so finally she wore me down and I was like, okay, I'm just going to talk to this doctor that she wants me to talk to. And that was Dr. Nordesis at the University of Washington. And she just blew my mind with the trials that she's had going on for a number of years. She had a phase 2 HER2 positive trial 10 years ago. 66 women got this vaccine. And 10 years later, 85% of those that they say got the ultimate dose or the optimal dose of the vaccine were still alive when their expected average life was going to be 5 years or less. And so it really was this seminal moment for me when I saw that vaccines can work. There's something to that. And they're a lot farther along than we think. And so that's when I thought there's something we have to do about this. And we started talking to doctors, and really quickly, they all came on board. They explained that they were working in their own silos on this. Many had been working for decades on vaccines, but that there were 3 new things really at this moment in time. And that was that they know how to get an immune response. They know what parts of cancer can be targeted. And then they have these new vaccine technologies, mRNA and DNA vaccines that they can use. And so knowing that we were at this tipping point and that it wasn't being publicized, it wasn't being talked about, it wasn't on every front page of every newspaper in the nation, I knew that there was more that we could do. And having these doctors want to come together and collaborate on this was so exciting because they thought vaccines are coming. We're either going to get them in 20 years or we could accelerate that if we smooth the process and get them the funding and the support they need. It could be 5 to 10 years or less. And think about if 43,000 women die in this country every year from breast cancer, think about how many lives we could save by accelerating that by a decade or more. And if that's your mom or yourself or your family, it matters. And so we really want to do what we can. So I ended up leaving my job at NBC because it was too much to be working on both full time. And I believe that we are on the right track, and this is happening in the past 10 weeks. We've really had an incredible, sorry, my phone was ringing there. We've really had an incredible boom in the people that want to talk to us about this. I've been to the White House twice. I was at the NIH earlier today. I've met with the head of the NIH, the head of the NCI, talking about this. We have a professor from Oxford who wants to join into our effort, and he was instrumental in a program they have in England, which is going to be 10,000 cancer vaccines distributed as early as this September to people as part of trials. And so this is happening. It's happening in other countries. Doctors here are working on it. And we're just going to do everything we can to accelerate the process and make sure that all of us who have been touched by breast cancer either have access to that vaccine, if our friends and families have access, if our children have access to vaccines. So at some point, the hope is that this could be preventative. Right now, it's looking like we can get at least therapeutic or vaccines that can prevent recurrence. And for someone like me, I'm doing well now, but I think about recurrence every day. And so these vaccines could be life-changing. So I just want to invite everyone to join us in our efforts to check out our website, pinkeraserproject.org. You can help fund the cure. It's so important for us to get the funding because the government funding has been cut in many cases. And so having people support us and support the doctors in that way will move that so much quicker. So thank you for letting us speak tonight and sharing. And I look forward to seeing Michelle speak and Betsy give you more on the science, which is just revolutionary. And I hope that it blows your mind like it did for me and really makes you want to join us and help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. And Michelle, are you up next?
Yeah, well, actually, next up is Nora, but I want to thank Kristen because she's been up since I think like 6 a.m. in the morning working on this and
Oh,
about
bless
to
your
go
heart.
someplace else. So I may ask Kristen if we can let her go on to our next effort, if that's all right, because I feel we've asked a lot of you.
No, thank you. I'm just happy to have been able to speak about it. I know you're in good hands. Yes, I have another engagement. It's a slog. We're working 24/7 on this. But it's important work and I've never felt more driven or like I'm supposed to be doing something. And it really has just been this wonderful journey so far. And I look forward to seeing it all come to fruition. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Norma,
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah.
Norma?
Hello.
Thank you. I was going to let you go next, Norma.
Hello,
She's
everyone.
Indiana girl.
Indiana girl here.
And and I wanted to talk about cancer, the pink eraser, and Indiana and her sister and why it matters and her husband. She's pure Indianapolis.
Yes. I requested to just say a few words on this important call that we're having right now because I am an Indy and my world is racing for the last 5 years, I guess. I'm actually here at my friend's house who just recently lost her husband to a battle with cancer in October. And we get together at least once a week when I'm in town just to support each other in all the cancer drives and cancer fights that we have. But I'll just be very brief. And I know the Pink Connection very well and participated in the fashion show, not this year, but the year before. My twin sister and I both had breast cancer in 2020 and 2021. My sister went through chemotherapy, several surgeries, radiation. You know, I was basically stage 0, but when I was diagnosed, it was during COVID in April. And because a double mastectomy was considered elective, I had to wait until July to have my surgery. So I did not know if I was going to need chemo, radiation, or any of those things for several months. And which made me question a lot of what's going on, what happened in the medical world back then. But since then, fast forward, my twin sister has been her cancer is back. She had chemo, radiation, and we thought everything was good, double mastectomy, and now she is stage 4 metastatic. My mother passed away from the same thing in 2004. And we are in 2024. And the fact that my sister is giving the same prognosis that my mother was given in 2004 is unacceptable to me. And ironically, my aunt sent me an article in the actual a paper article about the Pink Eraser Project. So I immediately started looking it up, and I teased Michelle and Kristen that I stalked them and said, I have to be a part of this, mainly because and Kristen has said this before too. Well, I guess I'm going to have to figure out a way to cure breast cancer because I'm not letting my sister go. And I don't want to see more women in this epidemic of 1 in 6, 1 in 8 being touched by breast cancer. My background is fundraising, political, and for nonprofits. And I believed I could use the platform that I have, my experience I have. I forgot to mention, my husband's Al Unser Jr. You may have heard of him. He's won a couple 500s. The Unser family's won 9. And not only do I have the opportunity to be a lot around some very influential people in the month of May, we have it all during the IndyCar race, which conversations really started in St. Pete, but now Long Beach, where I'm talking to drivers, team owners, sponsorships, all these things about what we're trying to do. And thankfully, Michelle and Kristen didn't think I was crazy or a stalker. Let me be a part of this and able to bring my background to help in the fundraising aspect. And so Pink Connection girls, you're going to hear some stuff here. If it's not this May, there will be some things going on that I'm planning in May, but maybe towards Brickyard as well. Just for timing that we have, but so that's a little bit of me. That's just, I'm not shy about what I've gone through. I know why people don't talk about it. My sister, this time around, she still has 3 kids in school, and I understand why women, they just don't have the time to do what we can do, and I do. So I encourage anybody to really take a look at the science and what we can do with a vaccine. And my friend. And yes, and many others. And the other thing is like, okay, I'm going to end on this. Have you ever had anyone say, I don't have dense breasts? I mean, it's unbelievable to me, these conversations that we have. But anyway, that's my intro. You can reach out to me anytime, but thank you for being on this call and taking the time to understand what's going on with this.
Thank
you, Norma.
Welcome.
Hi. Now I'm going to be, I believe I'm the next up. I wanted to say, I'm going to ask Norma, whenever you have to go, I know you have an engagement tonight too. We are very grateful to Norma, and I plan to visit you all this month. The month of May is to learn how to be a fundraiser like you. And we plan to make Indianapolis our second home.
Yes.
And a lot to learn from Norma. She has had I call it a legendary career on many levels, and it's going to be exciting to learn from her. I'll go quickly in myself before we go to the wonderful Betsy Lovigan. We may even have Laurel say a few words too about herself. I am stage 4. I have had it since 2018. And when it happened, I did not mean to become an activist in this field. I've done civil rights, anti-bullying cases, and I have 5 kids. So I'm pretty active in other areas, and this wasn't my specialty. It was a specialty that chose me because the moment I was told that the reason I was stage 4 de novo was because my mammograms did not catch my breast cancer that had been apparently doubling in size since 2012, every 6 months, but not seen, and that it happened every day, I said to my doctor, well, why don't we take care of me and take care of all other women who are in this situation? At the time, I had about a 1% chance, I think, as you know, that of going the full route. for years to come. And right now it's year 6. So far we're going well, as could be expected. I was in complete remission for a good 4.5 years. And what I've seen since we passed legislation in Ohio, passed other legislation, and traveled the world to really look at what people are doing to cure metastatic cancer, is that the vaccine offers a really, really, really important answer for every one of us. It's not just the first stages where, and Betsy will go more into that, where vaccines can prevent cancer from coming back. It's in the later stages when ultimately, for most stage 4 cancer patients, the drugs they're taking that are powerful start to break down, and then the choice is chemo forever or die, and probably chemo and die. And that seems as an awful choice. And for the patients who are not there yet, and I have received hundreds, maybe thousands of letters since 2018, for women under 50, 55, 60, to lose their breasts, to be pushed into menopause, it is a terrible, terrible cost for staying alive. I think we can really, really make a beautiful and wonderful difference there. And in the 10 weeks since we began, it has been a whirlwind. I do not think Kristen and I have had a chance to look up, because there are so many people who are writing us, so many people calling us, so many people want to be involved, so many people who are dying, so many people who are suffering, and so much we need to learn to get it done right, that we are taken aback by the enormity of the problem, but the enormity of the potential of vaccines, the science that has come to today to come forward. And since we began to talk about vaccines, I note 2 doctors we've spoken to already are, well, institutions have already become more and more involved in saying yes to vaccines, actually a total of 3, and really putting money and power behind it. I think that by the September, you will see a pink eraser revolution, and I hope you're part of it. With that, let me quickly go to Laurel, and then on to our Betsy, who is our doctor oncologist. And from what I can tell, Laurel's got an interesting story to tell, but I want to add as a quick introduction, every patient that has been a patient of Betsy stays her best friend for life. And how many doctors can you say that of? She really cares deeply, passionately, and never leaves her patients no matter what, and makes sure they live. So most of them are living to tell me the story, or all of them that I've met are living. And if any have passed, it would not be thanks to her heroic efforts over the years. So she's going to be an extraordinary, I call it, contribution today. Now on to Laurel, who is our wonderful entrant to the team.
Hi, I'm Laurel. I recently started working with Michelle and Kristen and kind of everyone at Pink Eraser, almost at what seemed at a serendipitous time. I had just months before meeting them, found out I have BRCA1, so I have a very high likelihood of breast cancer and other female-specific cancers. I am a recent graduate from the University of Michigan, so that kind of spun my post-grad plans around, but ended up finding the Pink Eraser, and it makes just all of this work that much more meaningful. And hopefully within my lifetime, I could be one of the guinea pigs. I would be very okay with that if it meant maybe not having to face all those surgeries I have on the horizon. But just been so grateful to work with Kristen, Michelle, and everyone else. And they're just so incredible, and the work is just so amazing.
And let me add, she's amazingly young, talented, beautiful, more poised than I ever will be, socially poised, and truly idealistic. And you know, you want to save the world for her. Betsy?
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Laurel. I mean, I am a radiation oncologist, and I got a call from one of my patients, and they said, you have to come meet with me and Michelle, and I want you to get involved in the Pink Eraser project. And I started researching, talking to people, and all of a sudden I knew this is where I wanted to be. I have such interest and faith in the process and that exciting things lay ahead. So with that being said, I get the job of trying to describe how vaccines work. So I truly hope that this will be informative, and at the end we can answer questions. And it's just an overview of vaccines, hopefully in lay people's terms. So I have Beth today helping run my slideshow. And Beth, can you start, please? Great. So today we're going to talk about vaccines to treat and prevent breast cancer. And I really have two people to thank for these slides, Dr. Nora Desis and Dr. Karen Dillon. They both are at the Cancer Vaccine Institute at the University of Washington. Next, please. I think we all know breast cancer is far too common and remains a really serious threat to human health. And we've made a lot of advances in breast cancer detection, thanks, Michelle, and treatment, but not all patients benefit. And recurrence, as Kristen said, is a serious problem. Most people quote a 5-year survival if you have metastatic disease. Chemotherapy and other treatments have significant side effects. We always say we hope the chemotherapy doesn't affect too many normal cells, and this can lead to horrible side effects. What's most exciting is the last line, where cancer vaccines can actually activate our immune systems to detect and then attack breast cancer. And this may be, and I truly believe it will be, the best tool to eliminate the disease. Next, please. Why vaccines? And Kristen alluded to this a little bit, but I think here's some pretty good graphics. We know the type of immune response we need to kill cancer. We try to get our immune system revved up with B cells and T cells, and I've always loved one of the names of the T cells, they're killer T cells, to try to find the cancer and eradicate it. The second thing we know is what part of a cancer can stimulate the immune system. So these little yellow pieces on the outside of this cancer cell, we can attack those. And that's probably been one of the more studied things, are these little on the antigens, the proteins on the outside of the cancer cell. The third thing is that new vaccine technology makes immunization more effective. And if you look, here's a needle going right inside that cell, and that's what we're able to do now. And that's incredibly, incredibly exciting. Next slide, please. First of all, when I see this slide, I always think of the tens of thousands of women who participated in clinical trials well before us, and whether they determined what sort of surgery is best for breast cancer, whether they determined what hormonal therapy is best, what chemotherapy is best, we have to thank these women. And we're going to need women and breast cancer patients to sign up and really do an informed consent and participate in trials. First of all, from the time a drug goes, we have discovery to phase 3, as Michelle and Kristen said, this can take 25 years, even 20 years to get FDA approval. The first thing we do is discovery, identify the vaccine targets. What can the vaccine target in a cancer cell? The next thing we do is preclinical. We test the vaccines in cancer mouse models. And then we go to phase 1 trials. And phase 1, 2, and 3 trials are in patients. And phase 1, if you walk away with one thing, I want you to remember it's about vaccine safety, drug safety. Is this vaccine safe? And usually phase 1 trials enroll between 10 and 80 patients. Once a phase 1 trial proves a vaccine is safe, we can go to phase 2 trials where we look at the vaccine's effectiveness. And then we can move on to phase 3 trials where we can have 300 to 1,000 patients. And we usually compare a vaccine or a drug against the standard treatment. Once we've gone through all of these testing procedures, the FDA will agree to approve or not approve a drug or a vaccine. Next, please. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about different vaccines. And one of the vaccines that has been studied is a HER2/neu vaccine. And if we look at it, especially the little diagram to the left and on the bottom, 30% of breast cancers have a high expression of a HER2 new protein. On the left, it shows a normal cell with not a lot of those HER2 new receptors hanging out on the outside of the cell. And in the nucleus, or in the inside of the cell, there's really only 2 copies of the HER2 gene. If you look at a HER2 positive cell, which we test for in all women with breast cancer, there's lots of those HER2 new receptors hanging out on the outside of the cell. And there's more copies than 2 of the HER2 new gene within the cell. We have come up with some therapies that can target the outside, the HER2 receptors, such as Herceptin. But with these new vaccines, we can actually target the HER2 gene inside the nucleus. So here was a quick example of a phase 1 clinical trial. It looked at 3 different doses. It was a plasmid-based vaccine in 66 patients. And these women, and Kristen talked about this study, had stage 3 and 4 HER2 positive disease. The vaccine was given 3 times, 1 month apart. Remember, women received 3 different doses. First question, is the vaccine safe? Second question they asked is, does it cause an anti-cancer immune response? And people who have an immune response tend to do better. So we want to see this. Next slide, please. What we found, and this has long-term follow-up, is the vaccine was safe. And remember, that's always the first question in a phase 1 trial, with 99% of patients with only mild side effects. So this was pretty exciting. All 3 doses, the low dose, the medium dose, and the high dose of the vaccine, were effective in stimulating immunity. And remember, we want to see immunity. The middle dose, which is actually the red line, was the most effective. And 80% of patients who received this dose with advanced breast cancer were alive 10 years after vaccination. And I think this is pretty exciting stuff. Even with the higher dose or the lower dose, which showed a less immunogenic response, 70% of advanced stage breast cancer patients are still alive. And I think this is just incredibly exciting material that has led now to phase 2 trials as well. Next slide, please. Let's move on to another sort of vaccine in triple-negative breast cancer, and it's the alpha-lactalbumin vaccine. And if the lacta seems familiar, alpha-lactalbumin is expressed in lactating breast tissue. And women with triple-negative breast cancer, this is overexpressed 80% of the time. So this has become a target for our vaccines, and we're trying to determine if the vaccine can prevent the growth of breast cancer in mice. If you recall from the slide, this was early on. Next slide. We were able to test this vaccine in women after surgery who had high-risk triple-negative breast cancer, and all women, importantly to know, completed standard therapy. Whether they had surgery, whether they had chemotherapy, they all had standard therapy. Then they received 3 vaccinations. And what they found is all doses of the vaccinations stimulated T cells, and we want to see T cells. That's your immune response. The vaccine, once again, was safe, and it's being tested and was tested in high-risk women to try to prevent breast cancer in women with BRCA mutations, such as Laurel's. Next slide, please. What do we want for a breast cancer-free future? We have intermediate risk patients, and these are patients and women who have chronic inflammation. One of the causes of chronic inflammation is extra fat, inflames our cells, and can lead to breast cancer. So actually, a vaccine is being worked on to target chronic inflammation, especially obesity and possibly the metabolic syndrome. Next slide. We have high-risk women, women who have BRCA1 or 2 mutations, or DCIS, possibly LCIS. We want vaccines to intercept or prevent cancer. And then the next group of women, or patients, I should say, next slide, please, is very high-risk women. This is when cancer has been diagnosed, and we want vaccines to either treat cancer. There are trials looking at women with limited metastatic disease and vaccines. And we want these vaccines to prevent recurrence. If you're in remission, how do we get you in recurrence in remission forever? Next slide, please. The final sort of vaccine I'd like to talk about is a stem vaccine. And STEM stands for stem cells, and these are very precursor early cells. The VAC stands for vaccine, and it showed a strong immune response in patients with stage 3 and 4 breast cancer. They received 3 doses of a stem vaccine. And what's interesting about this is it targeted 5 antigens. So this vaccine had 5 different targets it wanted to hit. And it took 30 patients with stage 3 and 4 breast cancer, hormone receptor positive, or triple negative. And the vaccines, once again, were given 1 month apart, followed by 2 boosters to see if boosters help. All 5 antigens produced an anti-cancer immune response, which was awesome. And if we gave boosters, it increased the level of immunity and the number of patients who responded. Patients are in follow-up, but this will go on and is going on further trials. So what do I think? I think these vaccines are here to stay. I think we're getting better and better. We may need standard treatment, but we also may need boosters with these vaccines. Next slide, please. Why now? Why is it the time for vaccines? And effective vaccines can generate lifelong protection from breast cancer as they do for infectious disease. Vaccines might be the only way to kill every single cancer cell to eliminate breast cancer. I should tell you, vaccines will be relatively inexpensive if we can mass produce them. The work of many research groups across the US, I mean, literally across the US at the best and the brightest places in the country, culminated in the development of a library of safe and effective vaccines that target different types of breast cancer. And I tried to illustrate triple negative breast cancer, HER2 positive breast cancer, and STEMVAC. Many of these vaccines are in phase 1 and 2 trials. And these vaccines, I can't emphasize enough, are meant to treat breast cancer, prevent recurrence, and prevent breast cancer in the first place. We want to train our immune system, our cells, to recognize these bad guys, these bad cancer cells, and eradicate them. Next slide, please. If you're trying to find a trial, and especially a vaccine trial, here's the government's website. And I've looked at it many times, and what you will type in is breast cancer. It'll ask you what sort of cancer, and then you will type in vaccines. And it'll start to show the places that are offering trials and the type of trials. I do think it's important that you work with your oncologist. Your oncologist needs to be your advocate and needs to help you understand what's available if you're eligible for a trial, and help initiate some of these calls as well. Next slide, please. What do we need to make these vaccines available for every breast cancer patient who needs them? Well, this is what Pink Eraser Project and what we are trying to do. We need a concerted effort with unprecedented collaboration across the breast cancer research community to do the necessary clinical trials to bring these vaccines for FDA approval. And as Michelle said, if you look on our website, we have the best and the brightest on our panel who are with us, who are going to help make this happen. Next slide. So please visit our new website, pinkeraserproject.org. So that is it for me, and I am happy to take questions, as is, I bet, Kristen and Laurel and Dory, whatever we can do to help.
So does anyone have questions for any of these ladies on our call? Beth, you're looking at questions, right?
Yes, right now there are
Looking
no
at
open questions.
Are there no questions right now?
I don't see any
Oh.
questions yet.
She doesn't see him yet.
Yeah, Colleen asked, how can we help?
Betsy, Laurel?
I think we need funds. Clinical trials take they take millions of dollars. I don't know how to put it bluntly. It costs a lot of money to run these trials. We need help with fundraising. If you personally want to donate, if you want to host events, our website gives you lots of opportunities. I think it's important that you also just sign up to get our newsletter and that you're supporting our organization. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
We need, and you can reach out to anyone. I always say it takes one person to change the world. And we do need funds. I mean, we want to fund 2 trials, at least by the summer, possibly 3, the ones you saw there. I'd like to get a trial going for every area of breast cancer. And if you know, the trials are only 30 people. In Britain, Great Britain, there's 10,000 getting personalized vaccines, and they're about to expand to Australia. We could, if we could get the proper government support, whether that be in Indiana or in Ohio to fund this, or in the US, start to really take these trials to every patient that needs them. But most importantly, so all this will take enormous money, enormous efforts. And then if there are people, I mean, whether it's bringing together patients, we're looking for people to come forward with their stories. We're looking to create recognition of the importance of this, because if people don't ask for it, no one knows that it's even a possibility. So whatever you're thinking of. You want to add to that, Laurel?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you both said, the biggest thing is funds and just I guess sharing awareness. I think when I went in for my first appointments post learning I had BRCA, this wasn't mentioned, which is really shocking. And I think that this is something, even if it's not necessarily available to the wide or to the public immediately, knowing that it is on the horizon and it's something that we can contribute to and hopefully get on the market. I wish I had heard that at my appointment, and just being able to kind of share that information with anyone who's willing to listen is our best shot.
So I know Kristen mentioned she had been to the White House a couple of times. Do you feel like there's political will right now for this to move forward?
No, we're trying to create it.
So
Okay.
from my experience with Kristen Michelle there's a lot of verbal support. Everyone, especially at the White House, everyone who's heard about it is like, that's great, that's awesome, but we don't have the funding for you. So funding is not in the government. They aren't, I guess they don't have the budget to do that, which is a little funny to think about. But there is the verbal support. And they said once we have the money to fund these trials, they will put their stamp of approval on it. So there is a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. I would say there is a lot of support, just not financial support from the government.
We want to make these trials accessible to women in different parts of the country. I mean, we have, as Michelle said, 1, 2, or possibly 3 vaccines that we are really trying to get funded trials so we can get moving on them and start to collect the data. So we're set up. We are waiting we have had a commitment of a significant amount for one part of funding, but we need lots of funding. And when we talk about clinical trials, I mean, just to put it in scope, it can be $1 million, $2 million to run a phase 1 trial. These are huge numbers. And the government isn't funding as well as it needs to be, in my opinion.
Okay,
Were
we
you
have a
encouraged?
question.
Go ahead. I was wondering if you were encouraged when we went through COVID to see how rapid a vaccine came into play, and why do you think that happened and isn't happening now with breast cancer?
Well, what's interesting is they had a lot of the technology from the breast cancer vaccines. That's why they could hop and make an mRNA vaccine very easily. They knew the
Really?
technology. And so we are subsequently learning from Pfizer and Moderna. We're getting more information on vaccines. So it's worked both
Okay.
ways, but that's why they were so ready. What I don't want to happen is people to think this is like a COVID vaccine. It is not. It will not be mandatory. But it's totally, totally different.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I would say just kind of going off of that, the reason the COVID vaccine was expedited the way it was is because everyone around the world came together and kind of put all this information together. And for some reason with breast cancer, that is just not what's happening. All of these doctors and researchers and scientists are staying in their own silos. And so Pink Eraser, essentially what we're trying to do is bring everyone together and have a similar sort of mindset of if we all put our minds together, we can use all of our resources around the world to come up with something at an expedited process, a safe but expedited process, rather than waiting for 30 years for someone to eventually get the funding necessary. We just put it all together and have it even sooner.
We
Yeah,
want to
and
see these vaccines, we want to see them come to fruition in 7 years. And we want them to go as quickly as we can with a collaboration. I'm sorry, Michelle.
No, keep on going.
Well, I
You
was
said
going to
what
go
I'm
to the
gonna
next
say.
question unless you had something.
Yeah, we
No,
have a few,
you
we have a
answered
few,
everything for me.
we have a few questions here. The first one from Shelley. Are the trials specific to only certain types of cancer? Also, what if you completed your treatment several years ago and are considered in remission? Do you need patients in trials like this?
So are the trials specific to certain sort of cancers? Absolutely. So for instance, it might not be all breast cancer, it'd be colon cancer. They're making vaccines for lung cancers. Ovarian is in the very early stages. But in terms of breast cancer, yes, they are type specific. And what I mean by that, triple negative, HER2 positive, less vaccines in something very common in the ER/PR positive world, but we're hoping that is going to be coming on board more quickly. So you have to enter a vaccine trial that is specific for your sort of cancer. And if you're in remission, do we need patients in this trial? Really, all the specifics are, as they say, in the details. So you have to be able to look at a clinical trial online and see if you're eligible. Many of the vaccines, especially the preventative ones, do want the vaccines given in a more timely fashion.
And I'll add something to that, which is you got to realize that one of our problems are in this country is that if you take a big the vaccine trials we're looking at are 30 people or less when you look at 10,000 in Great Britain. So one, which is why, so trials can cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, just one stage per person. So you've got to realize we are looking at a very, very expensive effort, but not compared to the cost of cancer, which is $23 billion a year, just for metastatic patients alone in terms of in terms of medical cost and lost earning ability, and many billions in terms of just cancer treatment for all stages. So it's not that expensive in the big scheme of things, but in the short scheme, when you look at a few, I call it cancer survivors trying to raise money, it seems like an awfully big amount of money to try to find it. So anything that can be done to help us. If you know anyone in your newspapers, TV, radio, publicity, that we can get the word out, because one person hearing our story may say, I want to be on board, just like you did. And anything that can be done to help us spread the word and to raise funds, we're really for, because our goal is to try to make this a country where where vaccines are a part of the treatment and perhaps even the prevention of treatment for many people, including
Well,
our
it's just so interesting that Britain and now we think Australia are both doing these huge vaccine trials really funded by the government. And we have not, the US has not hopped on that.
Okay, the next question from an anonymous source. This is exciting news. do you see a future where a cancer vaccine is available as a vaccine given to individuals in the form of a regular exam one time annually or whatever?
Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say the dream is to have it be something you can get. And I mean, eventually in a preventative manner. That may take far longer, but if it could be preventative rather than reactive, that would be amazing.
Okay, next question from Melissa. Should we be writing letters to our politicians about this? If so, have you developed a standard letter that we can use?
No, I actually think that this is not for congressmen or state senators or mayors. Right now, what this is we're not here to create a protest. We're here to create people who can tell every one of their neighbors what they're thinking about. You can send us your names, put us on your list, but we're trying in a very cooperative, positive, friendly way, persuade the people who are in the White House to take a new look at us and look at vaccines anew and consider joining their allies in World War II for another great battle. So to me, letters reflect, and I've been in politics, letters reflect a protest approach, and we are a collaborative, be our partner approach from the doctors to the patients, to the organizations like your wonderful one, to every person we meet. We're about bringing us all together in one big, happy effort to really transform the lives of all women on earth. So please join us, pinkeracerproject.org. And if there's a time we must do letters or the letters we write, we would love for you to sign on to them.
Okay, thank you. Next question. What are some of the upcoming scheduled events this summer to raise money? This is from Colleen.
Do you want to take it, Michelle?
Not there yet. Not there yet. We're just beginning planning, Betsy, and we're just beginning by meeting with people who we think we're going to meet with people one-on-one over and over again, and then start to plan events, hopefully with Norma in Indianapolis and Cincinnati. Betsy's going to help me put that together with Cheryl, and wherever we can. This is as new to us as everything from the start. Pink Eraser Project has been de novo, I call it. We try to figure out, what are we creating? So we brought in all the doctors. Then we thought, who do we bring in as talent, such as Betsy or Laurel, and extraordinary people. Take a look at our website, pinkeracerproject.org. Extraordinary people from all over. And then the next question is who would be willing to take a risk to end cancer? And if any of you know Steve Jobs, oh, I heard David Letterman's in your town and he's been helping, just mentioning that. Anybody you knows, anyone on the Indy 500? There are many people now. I mean, the whole issue of breast cancer, we believe, and vaccines, likely for everyone in the country, is likely fully solvable for $1 billion and or less. And think about that. And so it is even possible that in your own state, there is one person you talk to that just says, I'm in. You know, it's not big. I'm wildly wealthy, or my company is worth billions upon billions. And why not come behind this and perhaps even make a profit from it in some cases? So I think you want to think creatively, imaginatively, and positively and hopefully, which is what we do here. And we're peppy, and think, what could I do? You know, instead of protest or question, what would be the biggest mark I could make to help this project? And how would I go about it? And if you want guidance, just write us, say, hey, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, I know somebody who knows the head of Lilly company here. And I think we can arrange a meeting. Would you come into town? The answer is, I'm 2.5 hours away. Just call me. I'm in a car. I'm going to be there in 5 hours. If you see that fellow's having dinner, or woman, I'm over eating, you know, I'm over with drinks for the table. So think what you can do and think big, because if we don't get the momentum going, then ultimately, and this is the fear, the momentum has to be quick, because we have to overcome indifference apathy, lack of hope, lack of belief, and everyone breaking away into their silos to enter into this huge competition, who develops the first vaccine for one area or another, and not have us all come together in a collaborative way so everybody's covered in the world or in the nation. So this is the time to do it. And I'd say everybody who leaves this room, you ought to say to yourself, hell, if this obviously, if a stage 4 patient could start doing this all from a chemotherapy room, why not me? And the answer is, why not you? The answer is yes, you can do it.
Can we take the, have we tried to partner with any national organizations, and have we talked to Eli Lilly together? Yes, we've been in constant communication with pharma, both big and small. We're really just trying to figure this out, but we have been in communication with them. And in terms of Susan Komen or the Breast Cancer Foundation, we have also been in talks with several of those. There's pluses and minuses, whatever we do, and we just really are thinking about what our next steps are. So right now, our goal is to try to remain independent, but we do need funding, and we are not exactly sure what direction that's going to take us. Is that fair to say, Michelle? I don't want it to say everything that's,
Yeah, thank you.
yes.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Well, if you think of something later, it sounds like we can get on their website and communicate with them and sign up for their newsletter and become informed and part of the circle. Is that right, ladies?
Yes.
Well, I thank you so much. This is so inspirational and informative. And I just have a sense that tonight is going to begin some fresh energy here in Indianapolis. And I just thank you for taking time to share with all of us and be on this call. So, and I also want to thank all of you participants. You might not know this, but this is our first webinar, and that might have been obvious to you, but I want to thank you again for your patience as we got it all together and waited for everybody to join this call. So know that we appreciate you. I encourage you to go on to the website there, and let's all sign up for their newsletters and start talking about this.
And I
So-
want to thank you. You're one of our first invitations. We are very honored, and plan to be in Indianapolis a lot, and very thrilled that you contacted us, and thankful for all the work you're doing to end breast cancer in Indianapolis and to bring support to women all over the region. So we're very grateful that you thought of us.
Well, we hope when you come to town, you'll come right to our office and see everything that we're doing too. We'd love to get to know you better. But thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to meet you and to hear you.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.